What's up, y'all? Let me throw this capo on here. On the 5th fret. Check this out, brother. Let's get after it, dude. Let's see. It's actually on the 3rd, my song Horizons. So, let's see. Driving all these horizons, I don't know if I'm the one driving. The guitar is quite out of tune by the sounds of it. It sounds kind of weird right now. I don't normally play steel strings. That's just a little sample of my song Horizons. I'm in a little bit different countenance right now than I usually am. And then different than you've probably heard in a lot of In the Image Clothing Company podcast episodes. But that's where we're at here, is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company as a whole. There's 3 sides to us. I'll do a little introduction as I do what our company is. We'll talk about clothing, and then we'll get into the discussion. The intros are usually quite a few minutes actually long, so stick around for the discussion. Today's the 3rd of April, 2025. This is episode 93 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and it's titled Willingness. Because of all the reasons I'll get into within this discussion, but willingness and the word obedience really go hand in hand when it comes to our one and only living God, Jesus the Christ, the one that we were designed in the image of, hence our company's name, In the Image Clothing Company. So, one other third of our company is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. We address the human body's natural function, coming at it through the skeletal system, the thing that doesn't change. The fat content changes, the muscle mass changes. We address clothing because it's the only thing placed onto the human being, and if it's imbalanced, then the human body is. There's a center line, and there has to be a sternum in the front of the body, a spine, a trachea, a nose, all in the center. The jaw as well is in the center, but it stabilizes the whole body. So we talk about how to keep clothing centered, and that will allow, keyword, the body to work. That's what we say under In the Image Clothing Company. That's our phrase there. So we talk about many things with the human body function, basically everything that it does physically, and it is a physical thing. We also have another third, which is In the Image Clothing Company music, where I address sizings and setups of guitars. What I just played this intro with is not something I would normally be playing at all. Just to allow the hands to work is why I talk about setups so strongly. The hands are essentially the shoulders. The feet are essentially the hips. The body only ever works as a whole, activated. Everything only has its one neutral position that it has to reside in, if not otherwise being used. So, clothing for everybody. It needs to be in one location. If you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're tall, if you're short, if you're skinny or fat, any age, any part of the globe, any time period to ever be, pants need to be entirely above the hips, so there's no restriction to the waistband's effect on the hips. We'll word it that way for this. And slightly higher in the front than the rear for the angle of the waistband, because the core muscles on the front of our body have to get shorter to activate. That's the only way that will ever happen while wearing something around our waist. Our top seams that we wear on the tops of our shoulders need to be evenly behind the bones that are on the peak of our shoulders. Those peak bones are actually the other end of the collarbone that comes down to the center of the sternum right here in the body and the front of it. And the shoulders will only ever work behind our head. That's the only place the muscles actually connect into. The upper trapezius muscles connect to the very base of the rear of the skull, along the cervical spine, which is just the neck, and then to the shoulder on the top/rear of it. Now, those edge seams of our tops that we wear have to be where the functionality of the shoulder is. Otherwise, there's so much damage happening to the body. In the Image Clothing Company talks about imbalances. Oversized clothing in itself is a huge imbalance within the human body that happens if placed onto it, okay? Two things we call prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company. There's not always laces in shoes. There's not always tags in clothing. When we place a lace, which is just a rope, into shoes, there's only one way to weave it, the only way the human foot is shaped. That's what we call In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique, found wherever you find us on the internet or anywhere in life. With that technique, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside to the center line of the human being on both feet. Otherwise, your entire body is in a twist if it's not even, as I just mentioned. Secondly, we remove all tags from clothing included within the shoes. If there's a tag within clothing, it's either causing a physical gap, changing the body's skeletal system's only working position, and or not allowing musculature to activate. Then other parts of the body will be trying to compensate, and the body cannot nor will ever work within compensation. So the reason why this episode here, episode 93 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, is titled Willingness is because it's something that's so huge. We live on an earth. We're human beings. We're all equals, sinful by nature. You don't have to believe anything I say. I don't have to believe anything you say. And that goes for all of us talking to any one of the other people. Our God is above all. And all he wants is for us to follow him. He doesn't care about our money. He doesn't care about how our life looks compared to how we think it should. He wants us and the fullness of our attention on him. He wants our whole heart, and he wants us to be willing to do what he's asking us to do, even if it seems crazy, even if it's extremely hard, and even if it's exactly opposing what the world is doing. There's a difference between the earth, the natural planet is that, and the man-made world. Our God came to this earth to overcome the world, and he did it. He died on a cross. Among all the things that he did, and boy, am I probably going to sound like I'm just trying to scream at people throughout this. Great. I mean it, great. Willingness doesn't mean what a lot of people think it does. Are you willing to do things that make absolutely no sense because they're actually things that will last forever? When other human beings are doing things that will last for maybe 5 minutes or 5 weeks, and then maybe never matter again after that. I've done so much throughout what it's taken to get to where I currently am as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, within the things that I'm talking about, physically, my body and its functioning. Throughout this time, I've had no money. I've had a life that has looked so strange. I've gone through more physical pain than I could possibly explain. I have been screaming at the top of my lungs, God, help me. With all the absolute highest level of emphasis that I could put into my screams, and boy, do I get loud sometimes. My body has been in more pain than I could explain. I've been through heart surgeries. I've been through a lot of physical pain in a lot of ways. Wrecks on things, vehicles and bikes, skateboards, parkour and falling weird, hurting my body in ways like that. The amount of pain that I've been through because I'm willing to do all that it takes to get out of the chronic patternings that my body has gotten into that I caused. And it's not my fault, which is a crazy thing because I did it, but I didn't know. Wearing imbalanced clothing that put my body into positions that I couldn't have you try to believe. Clothing's the reason, but it's the truth, as we say, right? I mean, just as it is, as we show. You cannot deny it. My body, for years, I was in terrible, terrible positions. My sternum has been entirely cut in half twice, 2 full open heart surgeries, and put back together. I just mentioned that in the last episode that I filmed, which was just within the past 24 hours from this one. Episode 92 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast was that one. I don't even know the title as of right now. If it comes to me, it comes to me. It's not important to say right now. But having my sternum cut in half like that, my body was already within patterning because I was 7 years old the second time that happened. And at that point, I had been lacing and tying shoes incorrect for however many years that had been, and wearing clothing with imbalances in it. So there's already scar tissue in places. My body was already within a twist and chronic stuck positions. And then they cut my sternum in half and just wired it back together to let it heal. And so that happened within patterning already. And so that's one of those things that I have to deal with that almost, well, I'll word it this way, that most everybody else doesn't. There are people who have had a very, very similar experience. They've had open heart surgeries. But it's a very small population percentage of people will ever have open heart surgeries, let alone twice. And I've also had a pacemaker put in and taken out 2.5 weeks later because it didn't heal up and they were worried it was infected. And that incision was right on my collarbone on my left side. I also had a big, somewhere around 8 to 10 inch scar. Well, I have a scar, but had an incision on my right side of my rib cage underneath my right arm, where there was another surgery that they did. And when there's just big things like that happen to the body, it's already in positions now that are just not normal. And then on top of that, what I've done with clothing, what I've gone through to get to just where I am in this moment, speaking these words. And again, things you can't deny. You look at it, you watch the podcast episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast in visual if you want. You watch videos on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, and I started filming them before my body was anywhere near as naturally functioning as it is now, and you can just see the transformation. And what that has taken is the willingness to go through pain that most people wouldn't survive. And that's the truth. I know a lot of people they can't handle stuff. And people just have different tolerances of things. But I can't do it on my own, and I have a willingness to serve God, and I've been given this company. And I know I sit here and I speak all bold, and I sound like I'm just so free and kind of looking down on people at times, and like I'm all high and mighty, but what makes me have the ability to have that kind of boldness is I've gone through so much. I know what it means to actually put in the work. Like the episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Do More, Say Less. I'm not just effortlessly having some perfectly functioning body and making fun of others because they don't. I've been through it, and I'm going through it currently as of this moment speaking it. That's why I entered this saying my countenance is so different, because just about 25, 30 minutes ago to an hour ago, give or take, was one of those moments when I was just screaming as hard as I could possibly scream, God, help me. And it's scary as all hell. I mean, like, it's the scariest thing. I don't know if I've ever been through anything I've been through some pretty major things in my life, and this has been so crazy. So it's not all, sunshine and rainbows, and I'm not just sitting here and, acting as if everybody should be all as good as me because my body just works. If I tried to explain to you what I've had to physically go through to get to just where I am right now, and then continually more centered if there's more that I need to do, and I know of some things as of this moment that still can be worked on a little bit at least. Just the physical pain is something you couldn't put into words. I can't put into words, and you could never understand. I don't expect you to, but I want to make it clear, because sometimes I maybe sound to people like I'm just sort of expecting them to just like do it better, or like I'm just kind of laughing at people because their bodies don't work. I know, and there's a level of willingness that comes with faith, and it comes with knowing Jesus Christ as our God, the one and only God that we actually have. And in order to actually, fulfill the things that we're asked, sometimes it takes so much from us, and you have to be willing to do things that, I don't know, could potentially kill you. And you just have to be okay with it, because sometimes we just get asked to do certain things, and we either fulfill it or we just don't. And, we're sent here to fulfill the measure of our creation. We're sent here to emulate our God, and we're sent here to glorify Him and serve Him. And that takes so much willingness to oppose what everybody's asking us to do or telling us to do, or what the world's expecting, or the paths that other people take in life, and ours just maybe doesn't seem like we're doing enough, but people don't have any idea what's going on. And you have to just be willing to shut everybody's voices out except for God's. And sometimes you have to be willing to go through so much physical pain that you don't know if you'll survive it. So I just want to make it so clear that this is not some kind of like joke type of thing. And what we talk about here is as real as it could possibly get. And sometimes it makes you question if you're going to make it through, but you have to do it. If you want to reap the benefits and the fruits of the labor, you have to put in the labor, and you have to do it, and you have to be willing, no matter what people think, or no matter if anyone thinks you're actually doing anything that matters, or if you're wasting time or what. So you just can't deny the truth, and this just is what it is. And so the body, is a nervous system, and the body can just have so much pain, and I know it. So as we go, through In the Image Clothing Company, as it gets bigger and as people start to do what we're showing, and I want people to know that I understand the physicality of it and how painful it is and how scary it is, and I want people to understand that I know how much pain people can be in, to the degree that I can know it, because I've experienced a lot. And I just don't want anybody thinking that I'm just being so accusatious, because sometimes I'm screaming at people, and I get it, but it's because I get it. So as I've said, and I couldn't make it something it isn't, but we have the actual fixes here under In the Image Clothing Company on how to rid the pain from your body, but it takes going through more pain sometimes to get better. And you just have to be willing to serve God and just know that you're not in charge, and you're never going to figure something out on your own. So I can't explain to you what I've gone through or how scary it is, but I know that a lot of people can relate in a lot of ways. So I just couldn't make it something that isn't, and you can't deny it. So thank you. I'm going to cut this, and this is what it'll be, but the amount of actual torment and just, it's scary, dude. It hurts. It's sometimes I don't know if I don't know. I get it. Yeah, I really get a lot of what people are going through, and I've said that in many ways. I've been through a lot in my life, not only the physical stuff, but a lot of traumatic things, a lot of emotional stuff, and being treated terrible ways, and I've been through so much. So I don't want people to feel like I'm being this bad guy that's yelling at them, but sometimes you just have to be so bold for people to really hear the truth, and there's only one truth, and it is Jesus Christ. You don't have to believe it. I don't believe it, but no matter how much I could ever want to deny it, it's just the truth. So the body is crazy. It's the only thing we're given in this life, and it can be so painful. And it can bring so much fear and so much unknown and so much worry and so I want people to know it takes willingness. I know a lot of people in my life right now probably think that I'm taking advantage of other people because of the situation of life that I'm in. I know that a lot of people might think that I'm trying to make something make sense out of talking about clothing and think it's more important than it is. And I know, and I get it, and I get it, and I get it. But I'm willing to just have everybody tell me how wrong I am. And that's not fun, it's not easy. But I know that I'm not wrong because it's not about me being right, but it's just the truth, and it's not something I could decide. So the body is just what it is, dude. And it can be so altered. We introduced ropes to it. We have weights on it and things that aren't shaped the way that it is placed on it for years and years and years through every breath we take. There's no opinion that anybody could have. There was an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast I did, I think 2 or 3 episodes back, and it's titled No Opinion I Could Have. Clothing is the actual cause of your physical pain. I can say that, and I could be more bold than I could be, and I couldn't be too bold. You have to be willing, though. In everything in life, you have to be willing to serve God over serving anything else, because as it says, you can't serve 2 masters. You either love one and despise the other, you can only serve God, or else nothing will ever help. And you have to be willing. And sometimes that makes you look like you're crazy when people are looking at you and when the world is looking at you. And sometimes you have voices and accusations coming at you from all over the place, saying things that aren't even true. And you just have to be willing. There's a level of willingness that comes. That's really what faith is about. You have to be willing to know that you won't fully know in this life, but you'll still do it. You have to be willing to still do it. Whatever it is, whatever you're asked. However crazy it seems. And it's almost always just about exactly backwards when it's God's will. And that's where that word comes. We are willing to do the will of God rather than try to do whatever we want. So I know that unless I were to talk about it, people just wouldn't know. They wouldn't know unless they saw photos or videos of me in the past, how terrible my body's positioning was, what you could call posture, for so many years. And people wouldn't know how deeply ingrained all this scar tissue was within my body. And people wouldn't know all the major surgeries that I've been through. these things wouldn't be known or understood unless I spoke about it. And so I'm documenting what I'm documenting right here in episode 93 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Sometimes I sound pretty accusations. But we can't complain about our pain physically if we're not willing to do what it takes to rid it. And in the case of the body working in positions it doesn't for years because of clothing, there is no dispute. That is the reason, is what we place onto our bodies. You have to be willing to do what it takes if you want to reap the benefits. If you want to partake of the fruit of your labor, you have to be willing to put in the labor. I've had to be so willing to not have a job and have everybody think whatever they're thinking about me throughout this whole time in order for my body to be into the position it's currently in. And then again, just however it continues to be, the last little bits, or maybe there's more than just a little bit of releasing and getting out of these patternings that comes from this point forward in my own personal body. Whatever length of time it takes, I have to be willing to do it. Otherwise, it can't happen. I've had to be willing to just continue to live my life in the way that I have been throughout this time, the past couple years especially. Things looking so weird, but if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to fulfill what I'm supposed to be doing. And what I'm doing is then going to help every human ever that could potentially come in contact with any content from In the Image Clothing Company, any clothing that we ever put out that will help the body stay centered, any modification we ever show within clothing, any way we ever show the body works, because it only ever will work one way. I've had to be willing to go through. It's something I don't want to say in any way that could have anybody think that I'm trying to get credit or praise from doing it, but I've had to be willing to go through what it takes. We're going to help everybody. There's nobody that could ever come across In the Image Clothing Company and not be benefited from it. And it's not just something that could slightly benefit you, but it will change your entire life. And what I've gone through throughout these past couple years, we founded In the Image Clothing Company officially on the 23rd of the 9th month, which is September 2024. But it's been somewhere between 1.5 and 2 years that I started to mess with clothing and learn about all that I now know. All that In the Image Clothing Company is, because I'm the one who founded it. And there's no way I could ever explain or put into words or get anybody to understand or even fully grasp myself what I've gone through in order for all this to be the case. My life has looked crazy since the start. I came into the world with a hole in my heart. My parents got divorced when I was 7. 6 heart surgeries in total. I lived in a situation growing up where I was treated terribly. I've dealt with a ton of beliefs about the world and about myself, and I've gone through a lot. I've been so unhealthy in so many ways, malnourished because of things that weren't my decision in certain times, and then because of beliefs and patternings that I had, and other times when I had availability to enough food. I've gone through so much, and as disciples of Jesus Christ, we're not called to live easy lives. We're actually given especially hard lives, and like I'm saying, it's one of those things I couldn't try to make anybody believe. It's just the truth of how my journey on this earth has been, and I've had to be willing. There's been so many times when I was so ready to just not be here anymore. There's been so much that I've gone through that I could have given up and not stuck around, and I've had to be willing to do something that I didn't want to do because it was easier to maybe check out of this life rather than, as it's worded, endure to the end. And that's why it's worded that way, is because it's not about trying to have some big, fulfilled, fun life. It's enduring something that's the actual most fulfilling, but something you never would have chosen and don't want to do because it's not your will. If we're willing to do the will of God, as Jesus Christ, our God himself, said before he got crucified, he was looking to the Father, and he asked if the cup could be taken from him, and he said, "Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." That's willingness. Willingness to do something that's higher than us and bigger than us, because this life is just a joke. And boy, that actually calmed me down a lot. As well as all the physicality and just excruciating pain. There's so much emotion that comes with it, so much fear. But that calmed me down because that's how it is. Life is a joke. As it's phrased, we are sent to follow in our God's footsteps, and he came and overcame the world. It's not about this life being so great. It's actually about what's coming after it. And in it, we have to be willing to be okay opposing what everybody around us who's trying to get us to be worldly is telling us to do. Regardless of all the accusations, and I am somebody who's been accused of things more than most people ever will because of the life that I have and how it's been. It's been so much to deal with. So I just want to make it so clear. We talk about the only way the body will ever work, and also just it's not something you can choose to focus on. It's the only thing you actually have. Everything leaves, or at least potentially could, in this life, except for your body. If you have a body, you have an earthly life. If you don't have an earthly life. It's the body that is this life. It's the utmost important thing that you could ever put any focus on as far as what this physical life is. Otherwise, you're actually neglecting it if you're not doing all that you can for it. And when we talk about how there's only one way it works, because there's an episode of InTheImageClothingCompanyPodcast titled "There Is Only One." When we talk about we didn't design it, we can't decide it, that is the truth. And I know that I say where clothing needs to sit and how it will just not restrict the body, and I don't want anybody ever having the wrong intention, thinking you can just place clothing onto you and have it fit correct, and then you'll just stop having the pain that you've been experiencing. There's so much in between that, and there's such a process that you have to be willing to go through if you want the results. It gets said and phrased this way: if you want something good, you have to work for it. And that's just how it is. There's no way around it. Nothing gets handed to you. Sometimes we get blessed with things that may seem to just drop in our lap, but it's because of the work we've put in behind the scenes, or the work we've put in at a time that wasn't the moment when we got the blessing. But before then, to earn the blessing, we actually really do earn everything that we get. And that looks different in different situations, and that's not a one situation fits all type of earning. And it doesn't have to look the way that we think of worldly ways of earning money or earning a living. But our God's outside of this world. He created it. He created the earth. He created every human being here. He created all the options and possibilities and beliefs that we could have so that we could have them. He created the sins and the devil so that we could sin and so that we could go astray. So we have to be willing to know him and do what he asks. And sometimes it doesn't seem like we could make it through, but Scripture tells us, and by Scripture I mean the living word of our living God, out of the mouth of Jesus Christ himself. We are not ever going to be tested above that which we can overcome. We will never be given a challenge that's bigger than we can actually get through, but we can't ever do anything on our own, and so we have to call on God. As it says, call upon the name of Christ in every thought, doubt not, fear not. And that doesn't mean that if you fear you've done something that is so terribly wrong. I mean, yeah, we're commanded to not fear, but sometimes things can be so scary. One of those things, like I have discussed within this, I have quite the experience with just things that have caused me to experience a lot of fear in my life. So it takes a willingness. I talk about playing the long game. That's what it means to endure to the end. And you have to be willing to look at things eternally. Be willing to think celestial, as it says within, well, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That gets worded. President Russell M. Nelson had a talk about that recently, within the past little while from today's date. You have to be willing. Otherwise, you're not going to have the benefits. Sometimes we look at people and it seems like they've been gifted with amazing things, or they have things that we don't understand how they've been given, and it seems unfair. But it's like maybe how you could see the way my body works and the things I talk about because I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and think that I just have this body that functions and I've just been given something that maybe other people haven't. And we don't know what's behind the scenes if we don't know. And what I've had to actually go through and what I've had to endure has been just because it's the actual case, things that so many people couldn't even survive. And I couldn't on my own. But that's where the willingness comes, because I'm serving God, and not in a way that somebody else says I need to, or somebody else could say that it needs to look this way and you have to have this happen, and yeah, but he asks this of you, and they try to throw some scripture at you and say God wants you to have money and he wants you to be prosperous and successful, and what he wants is your heart. And I am not here to debate, but I'm here to tell you that I know God. I know Jesus Christ, and that's what I do under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and that's something you can't deny, because how else? You see my life because I've made a lot of it public, and I couldn't do it alone. There's no way. But I'm willing, even when it's scary and hard and physically painful, emotionally painful, even when I don't know if it's going to be the end of my life. I do it anyway, whatever I'm asked. And maybe not always the first time, but I am trying as hard as I can, always, to be willing. And sometimes I'm so defiant that I do the exact opposite thing that I'm asked by God himself. But we're just asked to try. Be willing to try again when you fall, and be willing to just have things be okay, not making sense, because that's when there's actually going to be the most reward and fulfillment. And it's one of those things that a lot of people don't understand. Yeah. People will think that stuff just happens sometimes, and they think that, some other people might just be lucky, or whatever word you could use, but that's why that phrase is so big. No matter whose case it's in, do more, say less. People who have things happen and have fruit to show for the labor they've put in, that labor has, in those cases, almost always, it's behind the scenes. It's not a showy thing. It's not something that they are doing to please mankind, but they're doing it to please God, and nobody, human being wise, has to know. So, I've been told I'm this and I'm that and all these things throughout my whole life, as I was saying, and especially this time, and I just haven't been comfortable with it, and with not contributing in the ways that I know a lot of times make sense, monetary value wise, as far as money or working at a job for income. And there's been a lot that I haven't even been helping people with around me because of what I'm going through, and it's stuff that I have to do, and so much physical discomfort that it just, takes a toll on me to even do simple little motions at times. But also, if we're just asked to not do things, even if it seems like it would be beneficial to, but God says just no, not right now, because he's using it for higher. His ways are higher than ours. His ways are the higher and holier law. His ways are not our ways, and we can't understand fully in this life why he has us do the things we do. But if we're willing to do them, then we're promised, and we'll be rewarded. And maybe that won't even be until after this life, but I know a lot of people do know, but for those of you who don't, what it really takes to be willing to do the will of God is so much. It takes you yourself doing things that oppose what your own understandings would say would make sense and be right or helpful. And a lot of times I'm not doing things that could definitely benefit people, but because I'm in ways I can't explain, not supposed to in those moments. And there's a lot of people who understand this deeply, and look at their lives. Look at the lives of disciples of Jesus Christ. It's not about them, but it's because they serve God. Those who make it public and that they're a Christian, their lives look the way that they do, and they have the successes, just meaning things are working and they're accomplishing things, whether it's any kind of monetary value wise or not, or any kind of worldly success, or if it's just that they're joyful, if they have good family situations, if it seems like they just maybe don't get sick that often, or, that's my case. I haven't been to a doctor in over 2 years for anything. 3 years, potentially. Somewhere between there. If we're serving God, he will bless us in the ways that he needs us to be blessed. He will bless us in the ways that will glorify him. The reason why Christians' lives look good in the ways that they might is because it's glorifying God, because they're not doing things that they want. I don't do things that I want. I don't do things to try to benefit myself. I very intentionally do things because God says, and they're exactly opposing benefit to me in the moment, but you have to put in the work. You have to sow the seeds so you can later reap the harvest. And there's seasons for things, and things go in phases. There's timing that's not ours. It's God's timing. It's God's plan. And that's a phrase that kind of gets thrown around in modern day. But it's something you will not be able to deny, whether it's you that's doing it or other people around you seeing it happen. No matter which one of you is thinking that maybe you could be, quote unquote, doing more as far as what it would mean in a worldly sense, in a sense of climbing a ladder, in success, of whatever that could mean in a way that seems logical to a human being. But our God is the God of impossible, and he's the God of miracles, and miracles don't make sense. And neither does a lot of the things that we do, because we're being willing to just listen. I don't need anyone to believe anything. I've said it so many times on In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I say it in my own personal life. As I mentioned here, you don't benefit from believing people. But you can't deny what's happening through me, and I don't need it to be some kind of thing you're trying to acknowledge for my sake. But the focus is, it couldn't happen if I wasn't willing to do it. I mean, without trying to put myself above, it kind of is a comparison in the sense of you have every access to it yourself, but you can see what people really know, really have a desire to put their heart in the right place and serve God, because you can compare out of just looking at two things as they are, somebody's life who's doing all that they want versus somebody who's willing to serve God, and just see what's happening between the two. There is a comparison that can be there without trying to pit one person against the other, but just seeing this difference. That's just how it is. That's just how my life is. And you can think that I'm self-righteous, and sure, do it. I don't care, because that's kind of a self-righteous thing to say, but it's the truth. So it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen because I was just, I mean, I think people believe in luck. There's no such thing. You don't have to believe that either, but right? I mean, well, that was actually the last episode's title. I just remembered it as I was saying that. Believe it or not, don't is the title of episode 92 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. You just have to be willing. There's no way you could deny that God exists if you really look at things as they are. There's no way you could deny Jesus Christ as the name of our God if you look at things as they are. Sometimes we get pretty bombarded by flashy things in our faces, whatever that could mean metaphorically. And if all that gets put aside, there's only truth left, and we have to be willing to do all that we can to put all those things aside, even though none of us will do it perfectly, and even though sometimes there's only a degree to that can be had because of our physical location placed on the earth, or because of the lifestyle that we have to live still as human beings. We can't be entirely out of the world while we're on the earth, where the world is, but we have to be willing to do all that we can. Otherwise, we'll just continue to suffer. Suffering's only for a time, and really it's for the entirety of this life, but there's different degrees of suffering in this life, and if we're willing to suffer through certain things, then after that, we'll have a lightening of our load, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, he asks us to come to him with our heavy burdens, and he makes them light. And that's what it's about, is being willing to go to him rather than anything else that you could choose to try to help you, like anything, somebody else, or any kind of thing you could depend on. If you're willing to depend on God, even though his answers are weird, because they are, yeah, they're weird. So, I mean, you can, even if you're an audio only of this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 93, titled Willingness, you can probably hear just how much movement I'm doing physically throughout this. And if you're watching in visual plus audio, you can see it. I mean, just the level of discomfort we go through sometimes is a lot to handle. But God is never any less close. He's ever present. And sometimes we just don't feel like he's close. We don't feel like he's there in the ways that we might think we need him. And sometimes that's because of what we're doing, and it's not allowing ourselves to be close to him. But other times it's just because we have to be willing to go through some things that are building us and stretching us, growing us. And it's like a taffy puller. When you make taffy, you stretch it and you pull it, and it's like making bread. You knead the bread with your hands and you kind of massage it out. These things, I mean, things have to be broken down before they can be built up. Christ himself, he said he'd tear the temple down and rebuild it in 3 days. He got crucified in his fleshly body. Our God himself, Jesus Christ, he died, and 3 days later he was resurrected and perfected. So we have to be willing to go through the hardships to get the good things. And this is something that's no new news to anybody, whether you've ever had any kind of introduction to what the gospel of Jesus Christ really is, because it is just the truth of all things, or if you've just experienced things in life because of that reason, it's just the truth. It's the truth of all. It's the truth for all. God is for all. Jesus Christ is everybody's God. There's no opinion of who to look to that could help you. There's only one actual real Savior, and you have to be willing to have faith and call on his name as he is, as he says he is. Jesus the Christ, Messiah, Master, King, King of Kings, God. I mean, in all actuality. So people in the world who have never been introduced to anything about the actual truth of what this life is, they know themselves that sometimes there's things you just have to go through that are harder than what you've been going through. And then on the other side of that, it's better. And there's no expectation we can have on that being a certain point in our life, and then we'll be like free for the rest of it. Because, I mean, the whole point is to die, so we can be resurrected through Jesus Christ. So through this life, sometimes we will be going through things that we couldn't imagine there actually being a way out of, and we have to be willing to, if we want fulfillment, if we want anything to matter. And yeah, there's no question on how to. It's just serve Jesus Christ as he is, and there's no question on who he is. We can read the Book of Mormon, the Holy Bible. We can read all true accounts of Jesus Christ, written down, real doctrine as he is, and there's no question, because it's individual and it's unique, and he knows everybody. He's got the hairs of your head numbered, and he knows his sheep by name, and better than you could ever know yourself in this life. So you just have to be willing to have some faith that he is there and he will manifest himself to you in the ways that he does. And that won't always mean, but could mean, him being there physically in front of your face so you can see him in the flesh in this life. But he manifests himself to you in the ways that you need him to, but he knows how you need him to. So you have to be willing. Willingness is in ways kind of synonymous with the word obedience, meaning in many ways just about the same. You have to be obedient to God. You have to be willing to follow him. And I'm not so great at that at times, but in all the ways that I can, I try hard. And that's all he asks, is for us to try. So I know I sound very self-righteous at times, and I probably am just being blatantly self-righteous at times, but I don't know how to be a perfect Christian, because I never will, and I don't know how to do anything on my own, and sometimes I just don't know how to really do something at all, and then I do it well because I am willing to have Jesus Christ help me, even when I am stubborn, because I'm very stubborn, I'm prideful, and yeah, I like to think that a lot of times I can do it on my own, but I have to be willing to ask for a little bit of help, or else there's always a dead end I'll reach. But he's the way maker, and he will always make a way no matter what, but again, in the ways that he needs it done, and that's not the way that we think it should be. So willingness it's huge. The silly thing about preaching the gospel is it's nothing to do with me. I don't need you to try to agree with me. There's a lot of things in life that people preach, and it's because they want people to be on board with them. And I don't want you to be on board with me. I want to show everybody who Jesus Christ is, and I'm just trying all I can to do all I can. And so you just have to be willing to admit that you've messed up so many times, because you have. You can't deny it without lying to really just yourself and God. You can say anything to any other human, and maybe they never found out what the actual truth was if you were lying, but you know it, and God knows it. So we just have to be willing to admit that we're always going to mess up, and that we're always sinful and broken and self-righteous. Yeah. People will call you all sorts of things, though, and they don't know what's happening, and I've just been called so many names and gossiped about so much, and so much talk has been had behind my back for things I never did. People are saying I did things that I haven't, and people are saying that I am something that I'm not, and I mean, it's always going to happen. So I'm always going to sound self-righteous in the times that I do. I'm always going to be prideful. I'm always going to mess up. I'm always going to turn my back on God when I think I can do it alone. Always. In this life, it's just a life. It's just life. It's just a probationary state. It's just a preparatory state to meet God again and come to his feet. And have him be grateful for how willing we were to try to follow him when we couldn't do it alone, no matter if there was anybody else trying to get in our way or not. We get in our own ways. So we just have to be willing. Willing to understand that everybody has a different purpose in life and that it's not our timing and that you can't tell somebody else how it works and what they should be doing. No matter how wise you are, how much experience you have, or how knowledgeable you are in anything. We're individuals and our God is our God. As in, he's my God, he's his God, and he's her God. He's the God of all, but he's the God of individuals. He's the God of perfection. And he's the one with every answer. He created the answers. He created the questions. He created everything. We'll never fully understand how he is all that he is in this life, but we have to be willing to try. We have to be willing to be okay with questions being unanswered and not knowing everything. We have to be willing to be okay being called names and having things be pinned on us that we didn't even do. We have to be willing to turn the other cheek even when we don't at times and we lash out. Only in defense, but it's still uncalled for because we've been commanded to hold our tongue. And sometimes I scream at people because I'm being attacked in moments. And other times I'm attacking people and maybe don't admit that I am in those times. But we have to be willing to just continue on and to just have some faith. I mean, that's it. It all comes down to faith. So, yeah. We have to be willing to own up to things and to admit to things, to have the hard conversations. We have to be willing to speak the truth to people with no intention to hurt them, even though we know that it will. We have to be willing to potentially lose relationships that we value and cherish by just being real and authentic. If that person will react the way they will react, they will. We have to be willing to put our own spouses aside and our own children aside and our own parents aside and our own selves aside and put God first in every sense of everything that could ever be. Sometimes things seem like you've abandoned somebody and you made the wrong choice by a worldly lens, but God has his plan, and you have to be willing to know that you can try to explain everything and anything to everybody and they might never understand, and you have to be willing to look crazy. You have to be willing to be the black sheep in the herd of white sheep. You have to be willing to be the oddball out. You have to be willing to just take it all because Christ did first. And you have to be willing to admit that you're not perfect, otherwise you're lying. But you also have to be willing to admit that you lie. Because you do. I do. It's about willingness. Yeah. You have to be willing to sometimes not get the last say or the last laugh and still be okay with it. You have to be willing to accept that sometimes the outcome of something in this life might be people thinking you did something that you just never did, but they're so set on believing that you did. Because people are people, and I have the right to our own opinions and our own beliefs, but they don't matter. And the only way we're ever going to be free is being willing to be wrong and know that God is always right. Know that truth is all that matters. There's no such thing as being right. There's only truth. What you can be saying is true, but that doesn't mean you're right. It just means you've spoken truth. right and wrong can be something that we don't ever question. You have to be willing to know that we always will. Wow, right? You have to be willing to be sinful no matter how righteous you get. And you have to be willing to accept that people will always think you're self-righteous no matter how much you're owning up to your own mistakes. So, this is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 93, titled Willingness. Today is the 3rd of April, 2025. So, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. I don't want to mention our clothing for the sake of asking you to purchase something, but we will have clothing available when we do, to just allow what we've been given by our God to work the only way He designed it, the only way it ever will work, whether we had an opinion on it or not. Because it's something we didn't decide, and so we can't. We didn't design, and so we have no say over. No matter what you think, or what I could think. So staying centered, fitting correct, made out of 100% natural materials, because the body is natural as well. That's how we allow the body to work with what we wear. And it doesn't have to be In the Image Clothing Company clothing, but when it's available, that's the only intent we would ever have behind purchasing clothing. I'm not even saying it clearly because it's not about us trying to sell something, but the only reason we'd ever have clothing for somebody to purchase is so that it can help their bodies work. So, yeah, I've gone through a lot of physical pain, and I've talked about it a little bit here and there as I've documented things under In the Image Clothing Company throughout this journey since September 2024, but yeah, it's been so much that I've had to do physically, and I've had to be willing to, if I want to reap the benefits, and if I want my body to work the only way that it actually does. It's just a machine. It just has hinges, rotations, and motion. It's only what it is. It will only ever do what it does, and we have to be willing to accept that and see that. Otherwise, we will always be in pain that's being caused by trying to get it to do something it won't. So, thank you.